So for the next hour or so, Daisy and I are going to present Aphasia Duo, which is a set of 2 symbol vocabularies designed for people with aphasia and their communication partners. This launched in October 2024 in UK and US English and in German, and it contains a range of communication supports to suit the needs of a wide range of people with aphasia. The name Aphasia Duo relates to the idea of a duo or a dyad of people, so not just the person with aphasia, but also their communication partners. So it's designed to be used together to help support and co-construct communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that will become really apparent as we're going through the grid sets and looking at all of the tools that are included.
So here's an overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to explain what aphasia is and how it can impact on someone's communication. We will discuss why AAC can be really helpful for people with aphasia. We'll talk you through our development process over the last year or so, and then we'll give you a demonstration of the vocabularies within Grid software. And there's also time for some questions at the end.
And I think as well, just to say that it is included in Grid 3 and Grid for iPad.
So what is aphasia? I'm sure many of you know already, but aphasia is an umbrella term for acquired language difficulties. So aphasia can affect speaking, reading, writing, and understanding. And an individual may have some or all of these aspects of communication affected. There are lots of different types of aphasia, which can present quite differently. It can be progressive, such as primary progressive aphasia. And for lots of people, aphasia can improve over time as the individual recovers. Aphasia is fairly common following a stroke, with around 25 to 50% of people who have a stroke experiencing aphasia. But aphasia can also occur as a result of other types of brain injury or illness, such as a brain tumour, infection or inflammation of the brain, or a traumatic brain injury. And it's estimated that there are around 350,000 people living with aphasia in the UK and between 2 to 4 million people living with aphasia in the US.
So again, people on this webinar are probably familiar with these terms, but just to make sure that everyone's got the same understanding, when we talk about AAC, we're talking about augmentative and alternative communication. So that is anything that someone is using alongside their speech or instead of their speech to support them to communicate. And Aphasia Duo is AAC that's been designed specifically for people with aphasia. So I just wanted to share a bit of context about that's useful to think about when we're talking about AAC and aphasia. So the first thing I wanted to highlight is that knowledge and awareness of using AAC with people with aphasia is actually really low. And this study here found that only around half of caregivers had actually been given any information about AAC in the first few months after stroke. So it's great that you're all here. Obviously, this is raising awareness of AAC and aphasia, and hopefully you'll all be talking about this as well. So, but that is the kind of context that we're working with. And some other common issues that it's helpful to highlight are that in aphasia intervention, often AAC is only thought about or considered for those people who've got really severe aphasia, almost like, well, you know, we've tried everything and maybe we'll try AAC now because it's really severe aphasia. But we know from the research that it can be really beneficial for people with more mild than moderate forms of aphasia. There's often a focus on language recovery, so the person has lost skills following their stroke, and the focus of therapy is often on regaining those skills, rather than thinking about how to compensate for that person's difficulties. So how can we help them to communicate whilst we're also helping them to recover language skills? And finally, an issue that is not just in AAC and aphasia, we see this in other areas of AAC, but the focus is so often on just supporting someone to communicate for a really limited range of functions. So really focusing on helping someone to ask for something they want or to get basic needs met, like getting dressed. But we know that there is so much more to communication than that. You know, you communicate obviously for lots of different reasons every day. So just that really casual conversation, asking someone how they are, how their weekend was, sharing information about yourself, telling stories,
telling jokes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, telling jokes. So there's so many reasons that we communicate that really you know, lead to rich interactions and relationships. So really, yeah, just wanted to highlight that before we go any further. I've also got some quotes that I've found in the literature that I think really support what we've done with Aphasia Duo, and also just things I wanted to highlight with you. So firstly, this really nice quote that's highlighting how AAC can be used to empower people with aphasia to fully participate and engage in life activities with increased independence. So that's really, you know, that was underpinning everything that we've done with Aphasia Duo to help people to be more active and participate in the things they want to do, and yeah, just everyday life, and do that more independently. So often when someone has a stroke, they can become reliant on someone else to communicate for them, or really just needing that person to help them in daily activities. So AAC can be really empowering. I also really wanted to highlight that there is no evidence that using electronic AAC will reduce someone with aphasia's use of speech. This is a really common fear when we're introducing AAC to anyone who also has some speech, but there is no evidence that that's the case. So yes, nice one to be able to share with people that you might be working with. And then finally, another thing that we would really hope when we're introducing AAC is that it's going to be beneficial. But this piece of research that highlights how when you're delivering therapy to someone with aphasia, that recovery of communication skills actually improves more when electronic AAC is being used than therapy without electronic AAC. So yeah, really nice reassurance that we are doing the right thing with using AAC. So I also wanted to share, before we sort of get stuck into the details of the grid sets and have a good look at them in grid, just wanted to share with you the development process that we went through when designing Aphasia Duo, as it was quite lengthy and it involved quite a lot of things, and it's really all of these aspects that have led to where we are now. So starting off, we had a really comprehensive literature review, looking at all of the research that's been done into using AAC with people with aphasia, and also more widely people with aphasia and their communication difficulties. That then led into us starting to build grid sets, and very early on recognising that what we're creating is going to need to be very comprehensive and involve lots and lots of smaller parts, because people with aphasia have got such a wide range of needs, and also that those needs can change over time. So yeah, we've started developing the grid sets. They have evolved dramatically through the course of the project, and one of the reasons they've done that is because we've had lots of feedback from people outside of Smartbox. So we've been lucky to work with some, you know, really top experts in the field of AAC and aphasia. That's been experts here in the UK, but also in the US and in Germany, and they've been really guiding us with the development of the grid sets. We've also then had some great feedback from clinicians who are working with people with aphasia every day, and also some user testing. So we've been able to try Aphasia Duo with people who've got aphasia and see what was working well for them and what was still not quite working well. And so every stage we've been able to go back, refine the grid sets, and yeah, that's led us to where we are now with something we're really pleased with that we're going to be sharing with you.
So Aphasia Duo, as we've mentioned, we have two symbol supported grid sets. So we have two sizes of grids. We have Duo 9 and Duo 16. And there are three main areas that are present in both the vocabularies. So we have supports for communication, visual scenes, and topics. And we'll show you around those areas in a bit more detail in the demonstration shortly. And there are also additional supports for word finding difficulties and to support things like chatting and interaction with a range of people. And as we've mentioned a few times, they are designed to be used not just by the person with aphasia, but also by their communication partner. So we will hop into grids and we will show you around the vocabularies. We'll start with Aphasia Duo 9.
So I'm just going to stop sharing for a second and fire up grids. And then share.
Okay, so here we are on the homepage of Aphasia Duo 9. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the toolbars. So we know from the research that navigation can be particularly difficult for people with aphasia. So we wanted to incorporate these navigation toolbars along the left and the right side. So it's easy to navigate to the main areas of the vocabulary. And you might see that we also have a toolbar highlight. So it's really clear to see which section of the vocabulary you're in at any one time. So you can see there the three main areas I mentioned previously. We've got supports, scenes, and topics. And you also have the navigation arrows, bottom left and bottom right, so in quite an intuitive place. And then top right on the toolbar, you can see we also have an info icon. We will show you this a little bit more as we move around the vocabulary, but basically on the majority of grids, you can access this info grid and it tells you a little bit of information about that grid, perhaps how to use it or how to edit it. And there's text and images on there, and it also speaks aloud, so that can be helpful for the individual with aphasia. So we're starting here in Aphasia Duo 9 on the supports page. So supports has lots of different features and tools to support with communication difficulties. So we'll show you around some of those. The first one is My Life.
My Life.
As you might guess from the title, this is an area where you can personalise this with lots of autobiographical information about the person with aphasia. So you can add information about themselves, about their daily routine, about their family members.
My family.
I'm just going to pause sharing one moment and fix an audio issue that we're having.
Okay.
Just 1 second. Let me reshare. I share without sound. Fix it. Okay.
Okay, grand. Okay, so back to My Life. So here you can see a grid all about somebody's family members. This format will become really familiar as we show you through the grid set. We've got that familiar format where you've got space for a large photograph. We know from the research that vocabularies are best when they are personalised to the individual. And then here we've got some word list cells. We use word lists really widely throughout Aphasia Duo 9 and 16 because it's really easy to edit and personalise, add and remove words and phrases. And yeah, in Aphasia Duo 9, you've got space for 5 vocabulary cells around your main photograph here. So back into My Life, there's just a couple of other things to talk about. You can also personalise a section about the individual's hobbies.
My hobbies.
You can personalise information about their stroke or brain injury. Lots of people find it really helpful to kind of have that timeline information, perhaps when the event happened, how long they spent in hospital. And there's a section to fill out about their communication, perhaps their communication needs or strategies that might be helpful. Want to show?
Yeah.
My communication.
And then there's also a section you can personalise about news events.
My news.
That can be really motivating for lots of people to share what they've been up to. And we also have space for several photo albums, again, to kind of support communication and engagement.
Photo album 1.
And one thing you'll see as well is with these dots, we've got progress indicators, so you can see where you are within each photo album as you're moving along. So lots of supports for navigation. So
the next section in supports is chatting. So
Chatting.
These are some quick phrases to support you with communication with a range of people. So you've got some phrases to start the communication, to kind of continue, to ask some questions, do a little bit of conversational repair. If you on the next grid as well, if you select more, you've also got some single question words here as well. And then the next section is mental health, which is important for all of us, but people with aphasia are at particular risk of developing things like depression and anxiety. So we've got lots of different sections here to support with that. You can talk about how you feel, physiological sensations in your body that might be hard to put into words. You can raise problems and issues. You can ask those difficult questions about aphasia. There's a really nice piece of research. Really nice piece of research influenced that, Daisy, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Ava was saying, mental health is important for all of us, but looking at the research around people with aphasia and what they're experiencing, the rate of mental health difficulties is much higher. And there was a really nice resource that was an intervention for people with aphasia, and it looked at how they could try and prevent people developing mental health difficulties, or if they were experiencing depression or anxiety, what they could do around that. And one thing that came out of that was to be able to ask difficult questions, even if there isn't an answer. That was actually really helpful. So we've included those here.
We've also got some suggestions of things that might help, and some access to some positive self-talk phrases, and also phrases to just acknowledge the fact that, you know, sometimes things are difficult as well. And then finally, there's an area to support with setting goals for therapy.
My goals.
Which could be a nice thing to work on with your therapist as well.
And again, coming out of that research, showing the positive impact of being able to say what you want to work on, and how that can actually really be helpful for recovery, rather than just that being sort of decided for you.
So this next column here are kind of resources which really closely mirror paper-based resources, which lots of speech therapists will be using with people with aphasia. So we know with aphasia, sometimes you can have expressive language difficulties, and you might say things which are not entirely what you want to be saying, and it might be that you make errors with your yes and your no. So the grid here, yes and no, can support that.
Yes, no.
And that can be helpful to kind of clarify with somebody.
And there's also, yeah, that ability to say, no, that's not what I meant, which was...
Or other options like, I don't know, or maybe. And rating scales, again, is something we've had feedback on, that this has been really useful.
Rating scales?
So in Aphasia Duo 9 here, we've just kept the rating scales nice and simple. We've got 3 options. And if you select one of the topics, for example, I feel, you can see that it then reduces the visual clutter, and the other options are not visible there. We also included some schedules. And these can be really helpful to help somebody plan their day, or just provide reassurance about what's happening.
Now, next thing.
We've got a few different examples, and then also some blank ones that can be further personalised.
And this was one of those things that came out of working with clinicians and saying, what are you already using that's helpful? And thinking that if these are already being helpful, then rather than having to have, you know, an iPad with Aphasia Duo and all of the sort of loose symbols and paper-based resources, then having it in one place, making it a lot easier at the point of introducing something. So over onto the next lot of supports we've got here. We've got a whiteboard. So anyone who's familiar with Grid will recognise that this is a new feature that we didn't have before Aphasia Duo. So if I click in here now.
Whiteboard.
Really kept this very simple. So there is a little bit more functionality when we get to Aphasia Duo 16, but in Aphasia Duo 9 we wanted to keep things really nice and simple. So it simply is an electronic version of your pen and paper that we know is really commonly used with people with aphasia, and can be really helpful if you're experiencing a communication difficulty, but you've got an idea of what something looks like. You could be drawing it on here. So maybe you're trying to think of the word and you can't think of what that word is, but you could draw a picture, so then your communication partner can recognise what it is you're trying to communicate. Or perhaps it's not an image that you've got in your mind, but you've actually got some of the letters, and then maybe starting to write those letters, your communication partner can be guessing what it is you're trying to say. And another way that the whiteboard can be helpful is also with the communication partner writing down keywords as they're communicating. So that's something that can be really helpful for some people with aphasia, to see the words, the keywords within a conversation as someone's talking to them, to support their understanding. So that's another really useful way that we can use the whiteboard.
This is also a nice point to maybe show an example of the info grids.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, here you can see one of the info grids. So each info grid will give you the name of the grid that you're on. So just that confirmation and support for navigation.
Whiteboard.
And if you click on it, you will hear that spoken. There's a nice clear visual clue. If you clicked on info and that wasn't what you wanted, that's your really clear way to close the pop-up. But then you've got some information about what that grid is for and also how you can use it. And that's really consistent through the grid set. Okay, back to supports. So the next support that we've got here is something called Chat Help.
Chat help.
And this is something that, again, really, was developed as we were user testing, really, and getting that feedback from clinicians. And it is designed to support with conversations. So as well as having support to find single words and communicate about different topics, sometimes if you're in a conversation and you've maybe said a single word or you've gestured something, but your meaning still isn't clear, Chat Help can be really helpful to try and establish what that meaning is. So maybe a person with aphasia has pointed out the window, and then their communication partner could use this grid to try and work out, okay, are you telling me
It's about a place.
is it about a place? Is it about outside? Are you
I want something.
telling me that you want something that's outside?
It's a question.
Are you asking me a question that's outside, and so on? So if someone can indicate yes and no, you can try and narrow down what it is they're trying to tell you. And we had lots of examples of using this in user testing. But I also remember talking to a team of therapists and showing them this grid and them saying that would have been so helpful when we were talking to that person on the ward, and it just took us such a long time to get to what he was trying to tell us. And it turned out
It's a joke.
what he was trying to tell them was a joke, and they were there trying to sort of work out what the problem was and working out if they were telling him he was telling them something and actually he was trying to joke with them. So the Chat Help grid has been really, really helpful, and we've had a lot of positive feedback, particularly from communication partners. It's often been the family around the person with aphasia or the therapists that have said, this will be so helpful, and also ourselves, we've been using this during user testing. So not necessarily something that the person with aphasia is using straight away, or even at all, but still something that's been really helpful. And in some cases, it's been something that the person with aphasia has started to use further down the line when they've seen that it's been helpful for their communication. So that is Chat Help, and you'll see this in Duo 16 as well. So the next section we've got in supports is maps.
Maps.
So this again is something that's just been really helpful and evolved through our user testing and work with experts, that having visual supports for talking about places has been really helpful. Often the names of places can be really difficult to remember, and just being able to have a conversation about where you've lived, where you've travelled, where you'd like to travel. So if I go into one of these examples,
Europe.
you'll see that these have got a familiar layout to what we were looking at before in the My Life section, where you've got a large image and you've got some phrases around the outside. And if I go on to more, you'll see that I've got some really useful single word vocabulary as well. So the idea of these images is that they can be pointed to by the person with aphasia to communicate. And again, we've had some really nice examples of this from user testing, where people have been pointing to parts of the map as a way of communicating.
We found maps particularly useful when we're introducing Aphasia Duo to people, because it's just such a nice way to kind of build rapport and talk about, like you said, where somebody's from, or a special holiday they've had. So that's been really helpful.
So that's the maps support. And over onto the next page, and I will say that you might notice there is lots of supports, and it's not intended that every single person using this would use every single support. It's really just designed to be comprehensive so that you can choose the supports that are relevant. Maybe the person's got really clear yes, no, and it's really consistent, and you don't need that one, but it's there if you do. And similarly, you might start using one or two supports before building in others. So let's go on to that next page and just have a look through these last ones. So we've got a jump to settings.
Settings.
So just being able to check your volume, change it to make it louder or quieter, check brightness, and these settings will vary slightly depending on what device you're using. So if you're in grid 3, you'll have this hide show menu option. If you've got a device with a second screen, such as iPad 10s, then you'll see options for those as well. We've got jump to a keyboard. So
Keyboard.
it might be that the person with aphasia isn't using a keyboard, but the person who's communicating with them is using it to sort of support communication, but it's there if it's needed. And we've got different keyboard options. So if I jump back to
Settings.
there's a change keyboard option here. So you can choose what type of keyboard you would like that other jump to. So I'll just show you the options. So the one you saw just now was a 2-hit keyboard, and that's designed to be the same cell size as you see throughout Duo 9. So if you're someone using Duo 9 because of access, or you need those cells to be that size for vision, then that's really consistent. But if you are able to access smaller cells, you could choose this ABC keyboard layout.
ABC keyboard.
And then for both of those, you've got options such as letter sounds. So we know that it can be really helpful to have a phonemic cue if you're trying to think of a word. So it might be that the person with aphasia can identify that first sound, or perhaps their communication partner can use the keyboard to give them that cue. We've also got an option for letter names or for no sounds. So I'll choose letter sounds.
Letter sounds.
And then for each of the letters that I select, I'm not sure if you're able to hear that through the call, but each of the letters that I select, you'll hear that phonemic cue. So D, K, B, depending on which letter you select. So that is your keyboard. We've got a camera, which I won't click onto now because you'll see me in selfie mode or the back of the desk, but you've got a camera, so that will use whichever camera you've got on your device. If that's an iPad, we'll use the iPad camera, and that can be really helpful. So perhaps a person with aphasia wants to take a photo when someone comes to visit them, and then they can go back to have a look at that photo later to communicate who came to see them. We've also included Simoji, which is something we've got in all of our grid sets in Grid.
Simoji.
Just to give you a quick example, so they're divided into different types of Simoji.
Positive emojis.
And they can be a nice way, just another tool for communicating different different ideas. So maybe you want to communicate that you're really happy about something, and you can use this guy here. So you've also got an option to turn on sounds if you want to with those. So that's emoji, and then we've also got a couple of smart speaker grids. So really common now for people to have smart speakers in their homes, and it can be a nice way to interact with those. So
Alexa.
I haven't got an Alexa in this room, so I'm not going to set that off. But yeah, you've got some phrases here, and that's just a word list. So really quick and easy to change those. So that's the support section.
So the next section we'll talk to you about is scenes. So scenes are based on visual scene displays, which lots of you might be familiar with. So in Aphasia Duo, we have 60 visual scenes, and they are organised across 9 categories. So we've tried to just be really comprehensive in what kind of scenes we feel that people should need. So if we go into one of the scenes, Daisy.
Daily life.
And then go into one of them.
Oh, so many to choose from.
Cooking.
So you can see here that familiar format that you've seen in My Life and in Maths, where you've got this space for this large central photograph, and you've got 5 vocabulary cells, which are word list cells around there. And then if you hit more, you can see you've also got access to some useful single words. So scenes are really to support conversation and participation in activities and around topics that are really important to the individual. So yeah, we've got a variety of categories. So at the moment we're in cooking, which is in daily life, but we've also got scenes to support people's hobbies. Perhaps they're into arts and culture.
Arts and culture.
And they might want to talk about textile crafts. Maybe they're into knitting and crochet.
Textile crafts.
And the research shows that scenes work best when they are personalised. So at the moment, we've tried to include, we've included relevant photographs, because we appreciate that you are not always able to personalise it before you want to talk about these situations, particularly if it's things like going to the doctors or going to the opticians. You might not be able to source that photograph before you're having those important conversations. But yeah, we are really encouraging people to be personalising these photographs so that they're going to be more meaningful and useful for them.
And in fact, if you go to the info grid for visual scenes, you will see lots and lots of prompts to personalise this scene using a photo of the person with aphasia, because we know that that is what is most helpful.
And again, these are all word list cells, so really easy to edit or amend if needed.
So just to quickly show you, I can jump into word lists there and there. Very quick to change.
And then the final section to talk to you about in Duo 9 is topics. So topics is where your single words are stored. We've got 2 grids worth of topics, so they're all split down into categories. If we go into drinks as an example, where it goes straight into your topic. Again, this is a word list cell, so super easy to personalise, to add and remove words. And on every grid, we've also got the option for something else. So it's really easy for the person with aphasia to indicate that this might be the right category, but the word that they want isn't on this grid. Some of the topics are also organised into subcategories if they are larger topics. So food is a good example of that.
Food.
So we've split that down into lots of useful subtopics.
Fruit.
And then if we just go to the second page of topics as well, just to give a few examples of other topics that we've included. So we know that verbs can also be quite difficult for people with aphasia. We've included those as well. And we know that it might be important for individuals to talk about things like finances or travel. So that's Aphasia Duo 9. So now we'll jump into 16 and we can show you some of the differences in there.
Okay, so here we are. The first thing you'll notice is that the cells are much smaller. So we've got 16 communication cells in Duo 16, hence the name, compared to the 9 that we saw in Aphasia Duo 9. So this will be suitable for people who have got better physical access. Many of the people that we've been trying this with have been able to access the 16 cells. But we know that sometimes, well, it's very common with people with aphasia for them to have visual difficulties following the stroke. So it's worth having those assessed and knowing whether someone can cope with the 16 cells and the slight increase in visual complexity. So I want to point out some of the things that are the same, which is we've got these 2 toolbars, one down either side, and a lot of consistency between Duo 9 and 16 in terms of where things are. And that's not because we're expecting people to start using Duo 9 and then, end up using Duo 16 at all. Really, that consistency is designed to support people who are working with both grid sets with people with aphasia. So the therapists who might be seeing multiple individuals using Duo 9 and using Duo 16, and if you're having to move between the 2, or even if you are assessing someone and you want to assess using both, you're not then having to change things and things aren't appearing really different within that session for the person with aphasia. So that's the reason for that consistency. So we've got supports, scenes and topics, exactly as we saw in Duo 9. We've got navigation in each corner and we've got an info grid. And you might have already spotted there's a few extra things which we'll cover shortly. But I just want to go through some of the things we've looked at already so you can see how things are the same and how things are different. So first of all, some of the things that we found in the support section, we've pulled out and put here because the home grid in Duo 16 is actually taking you straight into topics rather than taking you into the range of supports. So we've got My Life here right in that top left corner because it's been such a helpful place to start with people. So we've got exactly the same sections. So if I go into About Me, Same as before, we've got a large central image and a prompt to add your own photo, and we've got word list cells around the outside. But because it's 16, we've got space for more vocabulary on that grid. And then we've also, where relevant, got a jump in the top right corner, because people using Aphasia Duo 16 are able to manage a little bit more in terms of navigation, and it just makes moving between different sections in Aphasia Duo 16 a bit quicker. So we've also pulled out My News, so there's lots of templates in there that people can use to talk about things that have happened to them recently.
My News 1.
And we've got an example in here. So we've got a prompt to add your photo and word list cells around the outside. Then we've also got the chatting section. So in Duo 9, that was very simple phrases that you could use in conversation every day with anyone. But in Duo 16, that's really broken down into the type of person you're talking to. And we've got lots of examples in here. So you might be talking to carers, or talking to strangers, people you haven't met before, or talking to neighbours. And the phrases that you would use for those different people, some of them are the same, but some of them are different. So if I just go to family and friends, we can see that it's the same kind of design. We've got phrases starting a conversation, asking questions and keeping a conversation going, to phrases that you'd use towards the end of a conversation. And these are all word lists, so they can be really quickly edited and changed. And you might decide that actually you're just going to introduce one or two of these to start with, or just, starting with ones that are relevant. We've got some generic phrases as well that you could use to quickly use with anyone. And then we've got some topics down the right hand side for different communication functions. So being able to disagree with someone, being able to pay someone a compliment, and all of these different ways that we can communicate, all the different reasons, asking questions, and really important for people with aphasia, fixing conversations. So we've got a place to have all of those phrases here. And one thing to point out as well is that throughout Duo 16, there is also, because we've got a bit more space, and people are able to manage a bit more visual complexity, we've got a grid title on every grid. So you can always, wherever you are, get that confirmation of where you are in the grid set by selecting the title, and it will speak to you, or you can read it. So now let's go into one of the topics that we saw in Duo 9, so you can see the difference. So if I go into drinks, we've got a word list, we've got the something else consistently always there in the bottom right corner, couple more space for a couple more vocab items, but we've also got some sentence starters and useful phrases, so that people who are using Duo 16, if they're able to, could start to combine. Or because Aphasia Duo is meant for the communication partner to use as well, it could be that you're using it to clarify. So perhaps the person has said
Tea.
And you might be wanting to say,
I like tea.
Do you like tea? Or
I want more tea.
You want more tea, and showing how those phrases can be used to combine. I go back to topics and we look at food. You can see again that's got the subcategories, and it's really consistent with Duo 9. So that's topics. If I go on to the next page, you can see that we have got a couple of additional topics, and there's also space for some blank topics for anything that might be really helpful for that person to talk about. So now if I go to scenes, I think we had a look at the cooking grid, so I'll choose that one again. So we've got the large central photo, and we've got the phrases around the outside, but we've also got the words on the same grid. So because there's more space, it's not split across the two grids as it was before with Duo 9. And as I've already mentioned, in the top right corner, we've got jumps to other useful places. So if I were to select food, that's going to take me to the food topic. And you can see that visual highlight, really helpful for just confirming, I'm in the topic section now. And if I select back, that's going to take me back to that visual scene. And as Ava said, 60 pre-populated visual scenes arranged into categories. You can very easily change and move pull out the grids that you want to work with someone. You don't have to be presenting them in these categories, but you can just to start with and start looking through them to find out what the person with aphasia wants to talk to you about, what's interesting to them, as well as what they might need in their daily life. So that's visual scenes. And then if I go to supports, you should see lots and lots of familiarity. So we've got those paper-based supports that we know people are already using. We've got the whiteboard, which I'm just going to jump into just to show you how we've got some additional functionality in whiteboard. But I think we're going to have a proper example of that in a minute in action. But yeah, you can see lots of the things that we saw before available through supports and some more.
So I'm going to talk to you about some of the features that we've pulled out now on the right toolbar. So maybe if we first go to chat help. So chat help, you will have seen just a moment ago in Duo 9, but you can see here the grid is a little bit more comprehensive because we have a bit more room. So we have a few more options. So just to recap, chat help is really for use within conversation where the person with aphasia has communicated something, but the meaning or the communication reason isn't so clear. So you can use these options together to kind of explore and clarify that meaning. And maybe here is a good point to just jump into the info grid again, just to show how that works. I was hoping for an example with a picture in, because we have some of those as well, but
We do,
yeah,
yes.
we can find one of those in a minute. So that's chat help. And then the next feature is word help. So word help, in contrast to chat help, word help is to support the individual who's having word finding difficulties. So they are not able to express the word that they want to say, but they might have some knowledge about that word. So word help is kind of a scaffolded way to support that, really. So word help here, you can see 3 cells on the screen. We've got I can draw it, I know the category, and I know the first letter. And these actually mirror sections which are in supports. They mirror the whiteboard, the picture dictionary, and the word bank. But within word help, we've specifically chosen these phrases because this is similar to what speech therapists might use in their therapy sessions as part of semantic feature analysis or general supports to support with word finding. So let's say the person with aphasia has a word or a concept in mind that they are finding really difficult to say, but they have some visual information about it. Maybe they can draw it.
I can draw it.
What are you going to make me draw over?
Maybe you can draw a star.
I could try. Okay, so you can see in Duo 16 that we've got some additional options. So we have got the ability to choose colours. So maybe if I'm drawing a star, I might think, well, actually, that's going to help if I draw it in yellow. There we go.
Perfect. And you may also have some initial letter knowledge as well, just to support with that.
Yeah,
grand. So with word help, there are also 2 other options that you might want to use depending on what knowledge you have about the word. It might be that you are unable to communicate the word, but you know the category that it's in. So
I know the category.
If we go to I know the category, you can see that this page is very, very similar to your topics page in Duo 16. So the topics categories are mirrored from the home page. So that really just helps with the motor planning. So let's say in this example, I know I'm talking about clothes, but I can't quite access the type of clothes that I want to communicate about. So this takes you to a grid where you've got a really comprehensive word list of lots of different items of clothing. If you don't have any initial letter knowledge, you can just scroll through this list by selecting more words, and you can keep going through until you find your item that you want. So perhaps in this example, maybe it's wellies.
Wellies.
And if you did have some knowledge of the first letter or letters, you go to, it starts with the letters, and it takes you to your default keyboard. And as you can see, Daisy selected W, so it's narrowing down the word list, so it's only words that start with W. So that's word help, which is useful for your category knowledge. And then the final option in word help is if you don't have that visual knowledge, you don't have the category knowledge, but perhaps you know what letter or what sound the word starts with.
I know the first letter.
You can go to I know the first letter. This takes you to your default keyboard. The keyboard is set up as QWERTY with phonics sounds. So Daisy might know, for example, that her word starts with a T or a T. Again, we've got a comprehensive word list here. It's filtered by the letter, so all of the words here start with T or T, and Daisy might know the second letter of her word as well. Perhaps it's an O.
Oh.
So now we've got lots of TO words, so Daisy can scroll through, or it might be that, yeah, she's found her word which says tomatoes. So that is word help.
Okay, and yeah, I think Ava's already talked about the keyboard that we saw, but also, as Ava mentioned, you have got the option to change a keyboard onto a different one. So yeah, that is Duo 16. So lots of things that are similar, but also some additional supports that have been really helpful. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and we'll jump back into PowerPoint just for a bit of a recap. And then yeah, there we go.
So now we've shown you around the 2 different versions of Aphasia Duo, you'll have a bit of a better idea of the similarities and the differences between the 2. And there are lots of different factors that you might take into account when you're considering which version is best suited to whoever you're working with. So if the person with aphasia does have more significant language, cognitive, visual or physical difficulties, it might be that they find accessing Duo 9 easier because it has those larger cells and it has slightly reduced content. You've got the 9 communication cells per grid, and there's around 750 single words and 250 phrases. The topics grids are simpler in that they contain only the single words, no sentence starters. And then the scenes have 5 phrases and 5 words.
So I think, yeah, just highlight, although it is simpler and there's a reduced vocabulary, you've still got
very
lots of words and phrases in there.
Yeah. But if the individual has less severe aphasia, or maybe their primary difficulty is word finding, and they might prefer having more cells per page and more of that potential to be able to combine words and phrases to build sentences, and need those additional supports to help with word finding, then they may prefer Duo 16. So there you've got the 16 communication cells, and the topics grids are containing those sentence starters as well as words and phrases. And I think, as Daisy mentioned before, both of the vocabularies are compatible with keycards, and they can be used with any access method.
So just to summarise, really, some of the key points of things we've said today is that Aphasia Duo really includes a range of tools designed for a really wide range of needs, and also you can customise it. So we'll be sort of pointing people towards other resources towards the end of this webinar, where there's more information about how you can do that personalisation and, you know, choosing which parts of the grid sets that you want to use. But we've also got those supports that mirror paper-based resources, so some familiarity for things that people are already using. We've designed based on research and lots of clinical feedback throughout the process. We've got supports for word finding, but we've also got conversation level supports, because conversation is so important for relationships and connection. And then we've got 2 sizes for different needs, and we recognise that people with aphasia have got such a wide range of needs to try and cater for those. And then we've got those information grids to support communication partners throughout, wherever they are in the grid set. So they can always just get a little bit more information without having to necessarily refer to the full manual, although we do have those as well. So yeah, just highlighting some of those key features that we've got. We've got rating scales, visual schedules, space to put information in about your life and photo albums, and that biographical personal information can be so motivating as a way of introducing Aphasia Duo. So someone straight away recognising that actually, yeah, that's important information about me, and I can have a conversation and tell people about my life. We've got important mental health vocabulary if that's needed. Yeah, access to things, being able to talk about something that's really, really important. We've got maps. We've got the picture dictionaries, so those longer word lists organised into categories. We've got visual scenes, so there's so much research into visual scenes for people with aphasia, so we really know those do support conversations. And in Aphasia Duo, we have got such a comprehensive range of visual scenes, not just for getting your needs met, but having conversations around those daily activities, but also being able to talk about things that you were passionate about before you had your stroke or developed aphasia. So you can talk about what's important and motivating as well using those visual scenes. We've got a range of keyboards to suit different preferences, and we've also got the whiteboard feature, which is new in Grid. And I think worth mentioning at this point, if you do download Aphasia Duo and you find that the whiteboard isn't working or the symbols aren't showing up correctly, then you just need to update to the latest version of Grid. Grid 3 or Grid for iPad, just do an update and that will get everything working for you, because those were some new features that we've added.
So as well as obviously this webinar, we've got a variety of other supporting resources to go alongside Aphasia Duo. On YouTube, you can find a short playlist of some bite-sized videos just talking you through things like how to personalise Aphasia Duo and how you can use features like the chat help or word help or use My Life. On the Smartbox Academy, we've got an Aphasia Duo course, which is live as of today, so brand new. And then on the Smartbox Hub is where you can find things like some very comprehensive manuals for Aphasia Duo 9 and 16. And there are also personalisation guides and checklists, because we know how important it is to personalise vocabulary for the individual. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. We really hope that you found it helpful. Feel free to ask questions. I know there have been lots of questions in the chat throughout, which Hannah has been answering. And just to ask as well, we would really love it if you could take a moment to fill out our feedback form, which you can access by the QR code. It's just 4 very quick questions, so we would really appreciate that.
Okay, so I will stop sharing, perhaps I can pop that in the chat though, and we can take a look at some of the questions. Maybe Hannah can share the code in the chat. Okay, let me pull up the questions. I can see 2 people have got hands up as well. Maybe we start with hands up and then we can come back to questions. So Yvonne Harris, I can see you did have your hand up, but you've not got your hand up now. Maybe you had your hand up from the start of the call where I asked if, oh, it's gone back up again. Do feel free, if you unmute your microphone, you should be able to. Just let me know if you're not able to. Perhaps we are unable to unmute. Oh, sorry about that.
I've just unmuted Yvonne.
Okay, hi. Thanks.
Wonderful. Hi.
So I have Grid 3 on my PC. I have a license number, so everything looks just like what you have. But I have a Smartbox L8. I think the L series. I work for New Motion, and it doesn't have all the pictures. It's just how it says everything's missing.
Yeah, so that should be fixed if you just do a software update. So we did a really big update to the PCS library as part of this project. So we've got loads of new symbols and they're arranged slightly differently, which is why, yeah, you will get that missing symbol. So if you just run the update, so you'll have actually seen whilst I was presenting, there's an update that I haven't done yet, which you get the little orange circle if you're in Grid 3. So you can click on that and run the update. That should fix that for you. But if you do have any problems, just get in touch with our support team, and I'm sure they'll be able to help you. And then we've got another hand up from Marie.
Yeah.
So I think Hannah is going to unmute you.
Hopefully you can unmute, Marie.
Yeah, she should be able to.
Okay, or perhaps you can pop something in the chat So I know we've got lots of questions. I'm going to start at the most recent one I can see and work backwards. There might be some repeated questions. So, can I share some of the user feedbacks? That's a really lovely question. Yeah, we actually saw one of our users yesterday, and we did a really nice talking maps exercise. So we were looking at what she found helpful in Aphasia Duo, what she didn't find helpful, and also we were getting sort of questions that she had and improvements. And yeah, I think the main thing we noticed is just the transformation from when we first saw her, and she wasn't really saying very much, but her spoken language, she was just really chatty when we saw her yesterday.
She had a lot more expressive language. She was really animated about it. There were particular features that she had found really useful and had enjoyed using it. So she has been planning a holiday with her family. So she'd been using the visual scenes about holidays to kind of talk about that and plan it and explore the places and some of the vocabulary that she might need around that.
Yeah,
she'd been using some of the scenes about things like faith and religion and exercise. So yeah, just things that were very important for her.
Yeah, and I think as well that the chat help grid, where the feedback's not necessarily been from the person with aphasia, but been from those people around it, around that person, saying this has been really helpful. And yeah, we're just finding ourselves whenever we're getting stuck, just going to that chat help grid. And it's doing exactly what it says it will do and just helping. And I think it's just that's been really nice to see the reaction from people with aphasia when, we're saying it's okay, you don't need to give up. I know you're finding it hard to communicate, but we're going to work this out together. And yeah, it's been really lovely. Just seen another question come in. You can do a 30-day trial for the iPads. Can you do a longer, more permanent trial for SLPs who evaluate? So probably worth getting in touch with our support team, because I think that will vary from place to place. The 30-day trial is something that you can do just through the App Store. But if you get in touch with us and let us know that your particular circumstances, that's probably the best thing to do, because you might want to trial for longer.
I didn't know if it was worth adding as well that Grid 3 trial is 60 days. So yeah, that's twice as long on there.
Yeah. Is it possible to link, question from Elisa, is it possible to link Aphasia Duo with WhatsApp, email, etc., like in Grid 3? Yeah, so you could set that up by editing the grid. It's a grid set in Grid 3, so you could use the change grid set command to jump to those other functions. We've kept it really simple in the grid sets, just so that there isn't too much complexity and someone might not be managing WhatsApp or those other accessible apps. But one thing I didn't actually show in the supports, thank you for highlighting it, is there is a simple email and a simple text messaging grid that you'll find in Duo 16.
And in the update, there will also be some quick messages which you could share on the iPad with other apps.
Yep. Tracy Phillips has asked if there's any more information about the research and feedback from the design. So if you go to the Smartbox Hub, we've got manuals for Duo 9 and Duo 16 with lots and lots of references. So I've tried to reference everything that we've pulled out from the literature and put all of that in the manual. So I appreciate not everyone wants to read the manual. Some people would prefer those sort of bite-sized, just tell me in 3-minute videos, but equally, if you are someone that really wants to pore over the research and read more about it, then the manual is your place to go for those. And just having a look back, lots of people saying that they're excited to try it. That's great. And the outcome of when it was tested with service users, that publicly available. So we haven't published anything about our user testing currently, but I think that's something that would be nice to do in the future. Really, it was kind of a dynamic process through the grid set development to sort of take something, try it, get feedback, modify things, go and get more feedback, and keep going back and forth really. So we haven't published anything, and we didn't do sort of formal research study of doing any assessments or anything like that. So it is more informal, but it still has been really, really valuable. But watch this space, we might be sharing information at some point. So we've had someone asking about translations. So that's always, a good question. And we have got Grid and Grid for iPad available in a lot of languages, and we have had so many requests for translations already. So it's something that we're going to be looking at in the new year. We're really keen to get it available in other languages. As Ava mentioned, we've got it currently available in UK and US English, and those are localized as well. So you'll find the right words if you are in the US or you're in the UK. You'll get the language that is most suitable. But we've also got it translated into German, with more languages definitely planned for the new year. We've had someone asking where the webinar recording will be shared. So this webinar has been recorded, as you'll know, and everyone that's signed up will get an email with that recording.
There's a question about if I personalise a vocabulary, would word help include those words, i.e. does it pull through the personalised vocab? You would have to add them in specifically to word help because it's a separate word list to the words which are in the topics pages. We purposefully tried to keep the topics pages a little bit simpler because we know not everybody with aphasia will be able to use those more complex features. So you would have to add those personalised words in both places.
Someone has asked if the PowerPoint can be shared. So we don't typically share the PowerPoint, as we're kind of saying quite a lot more than is what's on the slides. But if you head over to Smartbox Academy, the course for Aphasia Duo that went live today has got lots of the content that we've talked about today. The slides will look very familiar, but also in that Academy course, there's a real step-by-step how to personalise, how to add things to the word list, how to change the order of things that are in the word list, how to delete things you don't want, how to change photos, change pictures, change labels on jump cells. So lots and lots of things in that Academy course that I think people will find really helpful. And that's gone live today. So it's free to sign up to the Academy. If you haven't already got a login, then you can do that. And there's lots of other free courses on there. Ariadne, I can see you. Hi, asking about the PowerPoint presentation for use in the Netherlands. Just drop me an email. I think you've got my contact details, or if not, you can go through Emma. I think loads of questions. This is great. Be useful to be able to choose between simple or advanced whiteboard in 9 and 16. So as I mentioned, we kept the whiteboard really simple in Duo 9 just because we recognise some people choosing Duo 9 need that simplicity and don't want to have the extra functions. But you could very easily pull in the grid from Duo 16 and just add in those different colour options and the pen thickness if you wanted to. And if you need any help with that, just drop a message to support. You can contact them through our website and they'll help you out.
And vice versa, I suppose, if somebody in 16 needed a simpler whiteboard with less distraction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got another question around, do we offer face-to-face communication partner training around optimal use of Aphasia Duo? We don't, but I love that idea. So a lot of our training is focused online, and we're always adding more courses, but I think that's a really nice suggestion because so much of supporting someone with aphasia is about that conversation partner, and we've tried to add lots of prompts and information throughout the grid set to tell people and support people in how they can use Aphasia Duo effectively. But that's a really nice idea that I will pass on to our training team. There's another question about combining parts of Duo 9 and 16. If they need fewer categories, absolutely. Something else that's covered in the Academy course is how to hide and reveal. So when you're in grid, you can select a cell if you're saying maybe they need fewer categories, or maybe you just want to start with a few categories to begin with. You can go into edit mode in Grid 3 and in Grid for iPad and hide cells if you feel like it's going to be too overwhelming to have all of the categories available to start with. So that's something you can definitely do. and that is also in the manual. You can see that Hannah's answered some of the questions already.
Yeah, I've just spotted another question. If somebody moved from 9 to 16 or vice versa, would any personalised content that had been added easily transfer? Because so many of the cells are word list cells, you could save those word lists and then pull them into the vocabulary that you're swapping to.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an automatic process.
No.
They are separate grid sets.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's not expected that someone would move from 9 to 16. It might be that you start, in a session you try out 9 and actually realise, oh no, let's use 16 instead, but rather not expected to be a kind of progression or anything like that. Someone asking about the rehab section in scenes in more detail. I'm just aware of time that we have actually gone over, but do feel free to download the grid sets. They are free in Grid, and have a look. And if you've got any other questions, you can get in touch. And I think we have probably run out of time because we have gone over. And yeah, I'll get in trouble. I could just talk about this for all day, but I won't. Thank you so much, everyone, though, for all of these questions. Really, really great questions. And I hope you found the webinar helpful today. And yeah, we look forward to everyone trying out Aphasia Duo and letting us know what you think. We've had such positive feedback so far. It's